get us started today. All right, thanks. Mark, you can kick us off today.
All right, well, good morning and welcome to everyone who has decided to spend either late Monday morning if you're on the East Coast, or early Monday morning if you're on the West Coast. And I know Cindy is on the West Coast, so she's up bright and early for some discussion about digital credentials, how individual institutions have implemented comprehensive learner records expressed as digital credentials. And, you know, in addition, and in fact, it'll be a bit of focus of this individual talk about how we use the IMS CLR standard in order to basically make the standard available beyond not only our institutions and our students, but to others who might want to ingest it. And today we are just so fortunate to have a group of people. By the way, I am Mark McConahay. I'm a consultant and now the CLR coordinator at Acro, the American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. And in a previous life, I was also known as the Brad Pitt of registrars. I was the Associate Vice Provost and Registrar at Indiana University in Bloomington. And I know that, and actually I did that for well over 39 years, almost 40 years. And I must say that I have a great set of colleagues here who are also going to share this presentation, Tim, Insia, and Cindy. And I know that they will not only disagree with my assertion that I look a lot like Brad Pitt, I think they're much too kind to actually speak the truth while I'm here and in public. So let's find out a little bit more about these three. So we're going to go in alphabetical order as it would be desired for a registrar. And so we'll start with Tim.
Good morning. My name is Tim Amix. I'm Director of Admissions and College Registrar at Volunteer State Community College. And I'm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, where we're finally starting to warm up a little bit. I actually have a pretty big passion for the CLR. I think it's time that we recognize beyond the academics on the student's transcript. We've known for a long time that a lot of learning takes place outside of the classroom. And there's so many different versions of this now. We can represent almost anything that that we need to for our students. I do have the current pleasure of serving on the Acro Board of Directors as a Vice President at Large, but was not in that role for this. I'm actually representing my institution, although I also have been representing the Tennessee Board of Regents because this is a system-wide project for us.
Okay, Insia.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Insia Bream, and I am the Registrar and Associate Vice President at University of Maryland Global Campus. For those of you who may not be familiar with this institution, we are a large global institution that has divisions in Europe and Asia as well. We serve about 90,000 students, and many of our students are adult learners who actually come to us with lots of previous experience and knowledge. Many of them are associated with the military. And so a comprehensive learner record for our institution fits perfectly with our student profile. And I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that with you today.
And Cindy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cindy Lyons, University Registrar at UC San Diego. We are a 4-year public institution, and we've had a comprehensive learner record since fall of 2016. And I'm excited to be here to share a little bit about our story.
Very good. And actually, I'm just going to take a few minutes and basically set the stage, bring you on board to where we were and why these fine folks were brought in to talk about their CLRs, and in specifically how they interacted with the IMS global standard for CLRs and basically make that available, expressed itself in an institutional guide, which we'll talk about near the end of this particular presentation. Well, if you're joining us, you already know what a comprehensive learner record is. You know, this really started to gain traction in basically the the early part of this century, and really began to find itself in the mid part of the 20-teens, I'd say in the 2014, 15, 16 time period. You know, it is beyond the traditional transcript. The traditional transcript as a chronological record, it serves us well, and it really served the academy as the backbone, as the means by which we could transfer information from one institution to another, and basically understand what it meant, ingest it, and basically put it into our curricular environments based upon the credit hour. Well, you know, in this drive, we recognized that there were other forms of learning that actually happened at the academy, and we needed to find ways to not only capture it, record it, but attest to it on the student's behalf. And thus the CLR, the Comprehensive Learner Record, came about. So not only coursework, co-curricular experiences, competencies, many other ways in which to express learning and to transmit that to a third party. They really do. The other part of this is not only the other kinds of learning and in the other environments in which learning might have occurred, but also let's add some metadata to this learning. Let's add learning outcomes. Let's add some frameworks and other ways in which you could place the learning that the student had achieved into some kind of context. And last but not least, it needed to come directly from the institution. In other words, the imprimatur of the institution was on this. This was not self-assertive material. This was coming from the institution. So what happened and how did Acro get involved? Well, in approximately 2015, in that time period, Acro partnered with NASPA and with the Lumina Foundation and really wanted to bring together those folks who were interested in creating solid CLRs. And in addition to that, provide basically a basis and resources for them to build it and express it. And so that's what happened in 2015-16. 12 institutions were nominated. They were given a certain amount of resources with the idea that they would express and build and basically have as a deliverable comprehensive learner record of their institutions. You know, and I'll say, just because I'm trying to get through this relatively quickly, there was a subsequent group in addition to the initial 12. After that proved to be successful, there were additional about 150 institutions that were also brought together in a grant and an initiative in order to build and express CLRs. Well, as we got now, we're talking greater than 150 institutions. It was recognized quickly that there was simply a broad realm of these credentials. And in fact, particularly when we were starting, we did not want to constrain those institutions from expressing these credentials in the best way possible that they saw fit, because we really wanted to find out what ways would happen. And in fact, therefore we had competency-based ones. We had those that were primarily digital expressions of credentials that those institutions already had. And we had those in which they found ways to express learning in other environments beyond the classroom. So all of those things were cooking. Now, as a result of that, and one of the things that was quickly recognized was that we could have a Tower of Babel going on with all of these unique expressions of the CLR record. We needed to find a way to funnel them in, to be able to understand what one institution was doing as well as another institution. And another way of thinking about that was in much the same way that the academy was able to translate their curricular information from one institution to another. We had to find ways in which to do that with the comprehensive learner record. In addition to that, we needed to be able to understand how to digitally exchange that information, how to ingest it, and to understand what it means. And thus we needed a standard. So what are standards? You know, you use standards all the time when you use your cell phone and you want to call a different cell phone or type than the one you already use. How does that happen? It happens in standards. Well, lucky for us, when we were looking at comprehensive learner records, at the same time, the folks at IMS Global, who were already basically experts in the building of standards. If you're familiar with learning management systems, you were already aware of IMS Global and the benefit they provided in enabling various systems exchange information with learning management systems. Well, they were also working on digital badge credentials, and they basically saw the need for the types of credentials that were being expressed by Acro and others as part of these initiatives. And they knew that we needed to find a way to bridge all of the various institutions and what was going on. So thanks to IMS. Here is a graphic. In the interest of time, I'm really not going to go through this, but I think you can understand that what we really want to accomplish is, once we've recorded them, we put together a package in which they can be transmitted from the higher institutions to any one of those third parties that might need them. It can be other educational institutions as well, but that's the meaning of that graphic. So what happened here when Acro got involved with kind of reviewing? We knew that IMS was coming up with the standard. We already had these expressions of CLRs that we were aware of, and we wanted to see if we could put those together. So Acro formed a group. This was in the approximate, I want to say 2018, 2019 timeframe. And they put together a group whose primary purpose was to review the IMS global CLR standard and see if it was appropriate for our use and whether or not it would be suitable. And the short answer to this is yes, we found it to be very suitable for all these reasons. It covered all the types of learning that were being expressed in the CLR, and it really benefited the types of learners that we were interested in supporting: traditional learners, technical, vocational. You get the idea. It was also very compatible. At the same time, Acro was reviewing competency-based standards, and we found that this aligned well, the IMS global standard aligned well with the competency-based transcript. It met the objectives of official learning institutions. In other words, we could express the kinds of materials and information that those institutions wanted to express. And basically, it could be done across many venues, digital diplomas, certificates, and so on. So for all of those reasons. But one of the things that we found, and one of the things that we really understood, was that one of the big strengths of the IMS global standard is its nimbleness. It could be expressed in any number of ways. As a result, we already knew that we had a plethora of expressions of a CLR, and we knew that in order to do this, we really needed to find a way to, I don't want to say uniquely define how these CLRs were going to be expressed in the standard, but to provide some guidance, a few guardrails to how to take the information that you have in your CLR and map it into the appropriate standard so that we gain all the benefits of the CLR standard itself. So that's what we were first trying to do. And we wanted to provide concrete examples. We wanted real CLRs mapped into the IMS global standard so that those who were interested could actually see the example. It's so much easier to talk from the concrete than it is from conceptual notions. And last but not least, we wanted to be able to ensure that it was available to and understandable to everyone who might be providing various products of support for those who were doing CLRs. So with that idea in mind, we created a work group to create an implementation guide. Charge is fairly simple. We really wanted to do all the things I just said. Ultimately, the goal was just to understand and trust the content of the CLR. Important to note, what we really concentrated on in the CLR implementation guide was a summative record. As you know, many of those who were working with CLRs also did formative records. In other words, where am I in terms of achieving certain academic or competency-based goals? What we were really concentrating on is sending out a record recognizing the achievements that were already accomplished. So it's a summative record. The intended audience, and I say this with great emphasis is it really isn't a technical guide. If you really want to know how to translate it into JSON, this isn't where you go. This is really for registrars, admissions, anyone who might have administrative responsibilities for a CLR. And that's what we were going after. And I know I'm going on a little long, and this is a long slide, but what I really want to focus on, that's a funny one. It isn't rendering appropriately here, but let me go to this slide and I think it'll help. We wanted to provide concrete examples in which we went from the institutional data of the CLR. So actually what you saw there was an expression of a digital certificate to the individual data, wanted it to map. In other words, take that data, map it to the conceptual components of the IMS global standard in a way that was easily comprehended. Then take that to the detail mapping over here, where this high level mapping, let's take all of the data associated with that high level mapping and turn it into the actual concepts of the IMS standard. And actually, at least in one case in the guide, what we did is take that data that we had detailed, converted it to the IMS global JSON, which is the language in which the standard is expressed. And then we transmitted it to a third party and showed that it could be rendered by that third party via the standard. So that's what we wanted to do. And so given that we really wanted to emphasize case studies associated with this, we have 3 experts, 3 folks who I find they're enormously knowledgeable. Not only that, they're just nice people. Even Tim is a nice person. So I'm going to turn it over to him. We're going to go in a certain order, basically giving you various concepts and looks at CLRs. So with that, let me turn it over to Tim.
Good morning again. As I mentioned earlier, I'm representing Volunteer State Community College, but our CLR is actually a system-wide project, and my institution happens to be one of the pilot institutions for this project. I will tell you on a couple of things on the front end. One is to debunk Mark's comment about being an expert, because one of the common jokes among this group is we always have to remind each other what the definitions are for things like achievement and issuer and child and all of this sort of stuff. So it's not opaque by any means, but unless you're working in it every day, sometimes it can become a little confusing because it actually is so incredibly flexible. But really quickly, our warranty card program, the short of it is that we actually issue a warranty on each of our graduates from a technical program. So this could be radiologic technology, ultrasound, respiratory, emergency medical technician, logistics management, any of those kind of things in the community college that's a 2-year degree, technical certificate. And our system also has technology institutes that issue advanced diplomas. The warranty is available for a year and can be claimed by the employer. And it actually covers retraining at no cost to the graduate or the employer. So if we say that you should be able to x-ray a broken foot and you can't x-ray a broken foot, then the employer can go on a website, claim the warranty, and we will retrain the student at no cost on how to x-ray a foot. Now, here's the problem. X-raying a foot isn't really a learning outcome. And so originally, and actually currently, because we don't have our final artifact yet, we issue the warranty cards on paper. But the employers don't really understand exactly what our learning outcomes are. And the warranty is based on the learning outcomes. So understanding how to claim a warranty currently could be a little challenging. So what we wanted to do initially was simply to issue an artifact, which was the warranty card. But as the warranty card process has been in place, we learned that we needed to educate our employers a little bit more on how to claim a warranty. Now, I'm proud to say that my institution has never had a warranty claimed for any of our students. And I'm not sure how many warranties have been claimed, but we do want to get this out there for our employers. So our solution, like I said, initially was a single artifact But regardless, it's what's called a summative CLR. The student doesn't get this until they graduate. So at the time we issue the credential, the warranty begins and the CLR would be issued. The CLR would have to be date aware because our warranty is good for a year. That doesn't mean that an employer couldn't go back and see the learning outcomes and that kind of thing, or the warranty card itself, but they would know that it was expired. In order to assist the employers in claiming the warranty, we realized that we needed to have the learning outcomes be part of the CLR. And so we had to take a step back from our initial plan, and we made it bigger. And so that's kind of where we are right now, is making it bigger. And we do want our learning outcomes to be extracted dynamically from our student information system. And so that's a little bit of a challenge. We're on a Lucian banner. So we're trying to work through some of those things as well to be able to store those learning outcomes in Banner based on our college catalog year that the student graduated from. So that way that we're not storing static learning outcomes and having to rebuild constantly with the CLR. It just gathers the information from our student information system based on the semester the student graduated and is able to present that to the employer in a validated form. So you start out with what we thought about as a digital diploma or digital credential, and then we added the warranty card, and now we want to add learning outcomes on top of that. So I want to show you, Mark, if you'll move to the next slide, I want to show you how my brain thinks about this as a registrar, so that we can see some flowcharts here. So on the left-hand side is of your screen, and I realize this may be pretty small on some of your screens. On the left-hand side is what you would find in the Acro work output, which is linked over in the chat if you haven't seen it, but that's what all of this is based on. So on the right-hand side, though, is the way my brain thinks about it to create the one on the left-hand side. So if you're a Banner school or any school, this might look a little bit familiar to you. So instead of focusing on the left-hand side, I'm going to focus on the right-hand side where there's some colored boxes, and I'm going to walk you through this. So the Banner academic program is the catalog, is the blue box to the left, and it's the catalog, which is the second green box through the purple box. So the college is the issuer. The catalog year is an assertion. So that's the year that the student has graduated and that our learning outcomes are attached to. Then the credential, in this case, might be an Associate of Applied Science degree or a technical certificate, and the major might be business, and the concentration in that major might be logistics management, or the major could be health sciences, and the concentration could be ultrasound technology or diagnostic medical sonography. And so to each one of those credentials, you think about it in a layer. So the red credential box on the left has learning outcomes that are associated with all of our students that are earning the Associate of Applied Science degree. Then the major, which is health science, could also have learning outcomes and should have learning outcomes associated with it. And then that concentration, which is probably where that employer is most likely to be interested, is going to have learning outcomes for ultrasound. So if one of the things that you're doing is an ultrasound of the heart, for example, and we say that a learning outcome is the student will be able to capably do an ultrasound of the heart. I'm not a learning outcome author, but so that all of those would need to be attached and displayed. Now, the credential, major, and concentration, that column is a column of achievements. And then the column that has the learning outcomes in it is also an achievement. And so the red box on the right, which is the learning outcome, is a child of the red box on the left, which is the credential. And as you move down the flow, you'll see that that each of the color boxes on the right is the child of the same colored box on the left. What's interesting is that things actually move from left to right and then sort of up in my flow chart. Because if you think about it from a registrar's perspective, the college has the catalog contains the credential, under the credential is the description of the courses required for the major, and then under that is the courses required for the concentration. In this case, we care about the learning outcomes, not the courses, but you can see pretty quickly that this is powerful enough to handle all of that. So, for example, we could create another column out to the left for the concentration that would have courses that are tied to the learning outcomes. And then you could get circular with it and put the learning outcomes back with the courses so people could take multiple directions. It gets very complicated very quickly, but it doesn't have to be. There are concepts that you use in your job at a higher education institution all of the time that will allow you to attach these things directly. And you already do it, you just do it on paper. And so being able to display this in an electronic summative format in a manner that's then consumable by other institutions is what the IMS global standard is all about. There's a lot of boxes that you fill out when you're trying to sort this out, and we've given you some guides for that, but ultimately it's things that for mine, it's things that I think about every day that my curriculum committee discusses, and you just have to get your mindset in such a way that you begin translating it over into the more complicated IMS global standard, but it's all there. If you take what's on the right and you look at the left, to me, it starts to make sense. And if you live in Banner, I hope that this makes a little bit of sense to you as well. My flow chart over on the right is not in the Acro document, but I'll put my email address in the chat. If anybody wants the one on the left to have sort of a walkover to the other, I'm happy to share that. It's something I made on my own. No proprietary information in there whatsoever. So if you have any questions for me specifically, like I said, I'll put my email in the chat, but I'll also monitor the chat. And I'm going to hand this on to our next presenter, or back to Mark.
All right, Cindy, you're next up.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to start off by giving you all a little bit of an overview of our comprehensive learner record, and then we'll dive into the diagram. So at UC San Diego, we developed a suite of engaged learning tools, which are a comprehensive set of tools that help students to discover, capture, review, and share their curricular, co-curricular, and professional accomplishments. The overarching purpose of the suite of tools is to really encourage engagement, to help students reflect and articulate competencies developed, and to share a holistic picture of the students' learning and accomplishments at UC San Diego and hopefully beyond. Two of the engaged learning tools included in our comprehensive learner record are the enhanced electronic transcript and the co-curricular record. The enhanced electronic transcript embeds contextual curricular data into the academic transcript. The user, through clicking the hyperlinks embedded in the transcript, they can read the course description, the instructor name and contact, and the grade distribution for the course section. The co-curricular record is a validated record of a student's involvement in opportunities that are beyond the classroom and those competencies developed. Highlighted on the record is, for example, the opportunity name, the position held, a short description of the opportunity, and up to 3 competencies developed from a predetermined list of competencies, which include things like, critical thinking and problem solving, research ability, leadership, and innovative and entrepreneurial thinking, just to name a few. As I mentioned, the 2 primary purposes of the comprehensive learner record are to encourage engagement and to act as an official record and reflective tool. And by having the co-curricular record printed along with the transcripts, so they're companions, UC San Diego is asserting that a student involvement beyond the classroom is a valued experience, and that it should be part of the student's recorded experience at the institution. I think this is a really important message for our students, their parents and families, employers and staff, and faculty at the institution. Students are encouraged to use their record when applying for jobs, graduate professional programs, and for awards, either by submitting the record where appropriate or using the record as a reflective tool to help identify and articulate their competencies and skills developed. Students can customize their co-curricular record by hiding opportunities or activities that may not be relevant for the intended audience, but they can't delete them. And we wanted to create some flexibility within the co-curricular record to facilitate students with sharing their own stories. So for the purposes of the Acro guide, I focused on the co-curricular record. I think that the organization of the co-curricular record is pretty straightforward. And I want to start off by saying that we have established criteria as to which opportunities or activities are considered eligible to be on the co-curricular record. The criteria for earning and achievement at UC San Diego is as follows. The opportunity must have a clear connection to the institution. The opportunity must develop the student's skills and competencies. And the opportunity must provide 30 hours of active engagement through the academic year. And it's not linked to credit-bearing activities. So the issuer, the publisher, is UC San Diego, Office of the Registrar. However, it's the staff and faculty of the academic units or student affairs units that validate, that assert that the student has satisfied the criteria to earn the achievement. And in addition, all of the opportunities or activities are verified by a co-curricular evaluation committee. So this is very much in alignment with our course approval process. And we have a committee that validates that the achievements or the activities meet the criteria, and then you have the assertion by the staff and faculty. There is a hierarchy within the co-curricular record. We have 4 main areas of achievements. They are the highest level of achievement. They are research and academic life, student and campus engagement, community-based and global learning, and then professional and career development. We list the activities associated with the achievement, including a brief description, the title, the dates, as well up to 3 competencies that the student had the opportunity to develop, which are asserted again by the staff and faculty overseeing that activity. We have a total of 12 competencies, and the competencies can roll up to 1 or more of the higher level achievements. You know, as I mentioned earlier, our goal is to encourage as many engagements as possible during the student's career here at UC San Diego, starting with their first year in attendance. I mentioned earlier in my introduction that we are a traditional full-time 4-year public institution, and all of our students are undergraduate, graduate, and professional students have the opportunity to create, discover, capture, review, and share their learning experiences. I'll talk a little bit about our future plans because what you see here is our first phase. Our future plans include the creation of a highly visual record which conveys the valuable learning experiences and the critical competencies of our students. And our goal is to weave together the credit and non-credit experiences of a student into a single document. And we want to continue to offer them a reflective tool, but with a much richer representation of their achievements and skills developed during their time here at UC San Diego. Similar to our first phase, we have proposed a comprehensive learner steering committee to be charged in order to oversee and manage the process of developing a comprehensive learner record and to ensure an inclusive and transparent process. I think that's really important. So our membership will be broader than the first time. We will ask for faculty representation, alumni affairs, university extension, student affairs, colleges, professional schools, academic affairs, the libraries, students, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and athletics. So I'm excited for this next phase. COVID has kind of hindered our progress, but looking forward to getting back on track and moving forward. So I'll pass it on to Encia.
Great, thank you, Cindy. I see that we actually have a question in our chat, and I think it fits well here with the CLR that was developed by University of Maryland Global Campus. And the question really is about students' feedback and how that played into our CLR deliverable. So UMGC was part of the 12 schools that Mark mentioned back in 2016, who kind of were charged with creating a first version. And our sole goal in that pilot was really to collect feedback from students. And so this, what you're seeing here in front of you is actually our second iteration. And this iteration does actually include all of the feedback that we got back in 2016. So I can tell you that in a nutshell, students wanted something short, something visually appealing, something where they can, easily share and understand the information. They would like something printable. They wanted, a lot of them actually looked at a document like this and said, wow, I didn't realize that I could use something like this, but I absolutely could. I could use the language in resumes. I could use the language when talking in interviews to employers. And so those are all the kind of things that we took into consideration for our second iteration of a CLR. So what you're seeing in front of you is actually a snapshot. I know it's difficult to see, but I'll walk you through it, of our CLR. And it's for our Masters of Business Administration student population, which is about 5,000 students who recently received this. On the left, you kind of see the first page, which really just has basic catalog information on it, where that student is in their trajectory in terms of completion, the accreditation of our program. And then on the right, you'll see more of a snapshot of where the student currently is. So what projects they've completed, the different project names, and then the current projects that they're undergoing within the class that they're pursuing at the time. Mark, next slide, please. We also wanted to incorporate badging into our CLR. And these badges actually represent learning throughout the program. So it's not specific to one class or to one specific project. It's kind of looking at the degree completion as a whole and how these different competencies came up throughout the program. Mark, next slide. So I just want to mention before I kind of jump into this, what's most interesting about applying the standard is that all of us on this call kind of started with our CLR draft, and we were able to work backwards and apply everything that we put into our CLR back into the standard. And so what's really unique about that is that you can see we all have very different things that we portrayed in our CLRs. We're portraying learning directly from the classroom. Cindy had co-curricular. So it's interesting to see how it can sort of apply to any different type of learning, as Mark mentioned before. So what's really great for UMGC with the standard is that it does multiple things. One, again, it verifies where the information is coming from for whoever's going to ingest the information. It actually tells you the relationship between all the different achievements that we have in our CLR. So since we're focused on learning within the classroom, we have, down to the level of project completion, course completion, program completion, and then ultimately to a badge. And so not only are all of these achievements associated with each other, they actually have a parent-child relationship as well. So in my mind, it kind of serves in a way as like a transcript legend would in some ways to help explain kind of how these are all related to each other and what they mean. And so I'm not going to actually go through every single one of these boxes. And you can see, I wanted you to be able to see it to a certain extent. So at the bottom is actually the CLR that I just shared with you. I want to focus a little bit on the badging because I think that many institutions are now issuing badges, and I like the fact that you can actually insert your badges right into your comprehensive learner record, and they can actually represent an achievement as a whole when you're talking about a student's overall learning. Because I think that when employers and students are looking at, okay, what are really my competencies that I took away from it, the badging is a great way to kind of put that all into one bucket, and for whoever's going to look at the information, for them to be able to see that that was something they've focused on throughout their learning. As I mentioned before, we are a large institution with adult learners who come in with various aspects of why they're pursuing their education. So that was one reason why we focus on our graduate student population. They're coming in for an MBA either to change careers, or they're currently in a position and they want to be able to move up within their company. And so what's also nice about this is that the standard helps you sort of see the achievements that you're earning throughout, not just when you get to the final accomplishment of a degree. And the way that we have it displayed on our CLRs, and depending on when that document is rendered, can easily help a student show their current employer or a future employer where they are and what they have learned throughout the process. So it's not just kind of waiting on that final degree. So again, I know that these are really hard to see, but this snapshot, as well as our CLR, is embedded in the overall implementation guide that Kelly has put a note to within the chat. And I'm happy to share additional information as well.
Well, thanks, Cynthia. Thanks to Cindy and Tim as well. As you can see, they have very different expressions of the CLR, all for the intent of both capturing and communicating the kind of learning that individual students are doing on their institutions, and in capturing it in ways that are somewhat non-traditional. In addition, and I think Insia made this point very well, it basically aligns with a couple of things. One, we really wanted to add to the detailed content of the record and the kinds of things we were transmitting on behalf of individual students. And secondly, what's nice about the IMS Global CLR standard is that it does align in so many ways with various badging initiatives that have already taken place, both at these institutions and others. As a matter of fact, IMS already had a badging standard, and thus it was just well suited to doing this. And right now, I would say, and Kelly can correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, they are now working very hard at trying to align both the badging standard and the CLR standard so that there isn't a straight difference between the two. And in fact, both can be used at basically the same time. The one last thing I wanted to say is that one of the things that I think the initial review group was so impressed with was the overall breadth and nimbleness of the IMS global standard. And in fact, all of the things that you've already seen were expressions of a new form of the CLR, either capturing learning outcomes and expressing them as a credential that otherwise wouldn't be a part of a typical academic record, and I won't repeat all of the things they said, but one of the things I really wanted to show was that not only can the CLR record do what they needed it to do, but if you go back and look at your traditional academic record, it also can be expressed using the IMS global record. And thus, it provides a means by which each institution can not only express something like new forms of attestment that have already been described, but the traditional record as well. And if you start thinking about where that might head, if you want to empower students with their credentials, let them disclose their credentials to third parties at their discretion, and enable them to basically curate them, organize them in such ways that basically serve them the best and are most germane to those who might be receiving those credentials. Boy, the IMS global standard kind of suits that purpose. So, and again, as a couple of the presenters have already stated, this is really hard to see. What I really want to note is that if you think about it, there's a hierarchy expressed in an academic record, very similar to what Insia or Cindy have described, where either learning outcomes, experiences, or courses lead to various credentials in step. And thus, if you take enough of those, like requirements in an academic curriculum, you reach a point at which you obtain a degree. Well, that's exactly what you can do. Looking on the right side of this, where the academic record is, you can take those individual pieces and place them into the concepts associated with the IMS global standard. And I'll just say them, the primary ones are achievement, assertion, and association. And achievement you can think of as, if your institution has a set of degrees, you lay out that set of degrees and you say, here is my inventory of degrees. Well, those become achievements. And then you associate, and I shouldn't use that word, but you match that achievement, that degree, with an individual student who has earned it. And that becomes an assertion of that particular degree, that particular achievement. And then if you want to decide, okay, what components of this records were associated with obtaining that particular credential, that particular degree, that's where this association of those achievements comes in. And that's what is able to be shown right here on this record. Again, I think in the interest of time, we only have 12 minutes or so left. I don't want to go into a lot of detail. The last thing I will say, if you notice on the left-hand side of this chart, you will see that there is a means by which you can chart the authority of specific credentials to the appropriate party. So, if we have a degree in which we wish to basically attest to the third party that it came from an accreditation body, that in other words, we have governance, this has authority, and this authority can be traced. Well, the IMS global standard enables you to chart those various things. Now, not only do you have degrees, but you have learning outcomes in which the authority is a lesser degree, and you can chart who that is too. And that is the point of this this model on the left-hand side. Just to sort of wrap up, one of the things that we really want to accomplish with the comprehensive learner record, with putting it out into the public context, is to maintain the trust that we have established with the academic record. That in fact, when you receive this from either the student or the institution, that the custody of trust associated with that specific record remains true. We've established that and done really, really well with the traditional transcript and academic record. And I think the IMS global standard is a key component to enabling us to maintain that kind of trust as we try to expand the kinds of things we're trying to attest to on students' behalf. So I think with about 10 minutes left, we're ready for do Cindy, Tim, Incia, do you have anything further to add? And secondly, we're open to any questions you might have.
Mark, I actually just have one more comment. So, really what this comes down to is just an exchange of data. And so what we want to provide is a way for us to provide this data to wherever the student wants it to go in a digital fashion. So applying the standard allows institutions, companies, different organizations to do that with ease in terms of just sending information back and forth. When you think about, students having to request documents today, this would actually change that landscape too, in terms of putting it into a format where the data can just be sent back and forth between institutions. And I think that's one of the most important factors of implementing a standard.
One last thing on the slides, which again, this is not rendered perfectly, but here is the group that created the work guide. I give them a golf clap on this particular session. They did wonderful work. This really was a tough nut to crack, and I think they did a wonderful job. So pay attention to all those who contributed. And that's it. We're ready for questions.
So Mark, we've had a couple come in while you guys have been talking. One is, can any of you comment on if you've used this model with to support multiple delivery platforms? So using like an LMS and an edX and Cornerstone and Coursera all together to bring these together?
So
Well, go ahead, Intia.
No, I was just going to say, so one way that we sort of tackled that is by having all of our information go to a data warehouse. So the data warehouse actually will pull in information from our SIS, which is currently PeopleSoft, our LMS, which is D2L, and other factors where we needed to actually, you know, receive like grades, rubrics, biodemic information, and it kind of pulls it all into there. And then we were actually able to extract everything into the data warehouse and use the information directly from there. And so that was one way that we got around the multiple systems that I'm sure we all use every day.
You know, I will say that question basically keys into one of the issues that almost every institution has with their CLR, and that is that, you know, their primary system of record usually doesn't contain everything they need in order to record the information regarding a CLR. And thus you need some way to basically aggregate, store, and have available, have it all the information staged appropriately. And Insia talked about one. You know, in Indiana University's case, we modified PeopleSoft by creating some tables, bolt-on tables, basically, that enabled us to add the content we needed to the system of record. It was important for us that everything that we were going to attest to as part of a CLR, that it be maintained exactly as other information is maintained on a system of record, so that it was there permanently, it was validated, it had integrity, and all of those things. Again, I'll step back and say from an implementation perspective, we recognize that this can be somewhat a unique circumstance with each individual institution. And finding the right mode, whether it be a data warehouse, modifying the system of record, using some other platform. There are vendors out there that also provide this kind of platform for aggregating the information required for doing this. But often it isn't going to sit in one location.
All right. For Cindy, how have your staff and administrators navigated the burden of validation for co-curricular activities?
So I'm going to say I'm fairly fortunate because the campus has bought into the co-curricular record and the comprehensive learner record. It started out as a grassroots effort. It was part of our education initiative, which was a part of our strategic plan when the chancellor came on board. And so we do have engaged learning specialists in the Commons who facilitate a lot of conversations and even the data entry. We actually use a third-party vendor called Orbis Communications, and I think they've been recently bought out. But we use that, and they facilitate a lot of the entry, and then it's just up to the faculty and staff to, you know, certify that the students have met the criteria. But you know, it's been, everyone's positive and everyone believes in this. And so it's been really good.
And then another one that came in is, how do employers access the digital record? Are they able to consume and understand the artifact in their system at all? Have you heard feedback from your learners or maybe employer partners?
So I'll say for us, our students, it's in their control to send the documents to whomever they'd like to send them to. And then the feedback that we've gotten is from our students, it's been a reflective tool for them. Again, to go back and just think about those experiences and then be able to articulate them to potential employers or graduate professional schools. And so they've really appreciated that.
I'll follow up on that a little bit. Our vision is that the student will be able to put a link on a resume or a hyperlink in LinkedIn. We're not trying to generate paper right now. We're trying to generate something that's certified online. So, it's up to the student to share. The student sharing their own information, that allows us to not have FERPA concerns because the student is in charge of their own data. I also tell you, if you start thinking about it from your own institution's perspective, you're probably tracking a lot more things than you think you are. I don't remember who said we sort of already had something and then we put it in the standard. You probably have a lot of stuff that will fit in the standard. I don't know of any student life, student activities people anywhere that aren't hungry to justify what they're doing, being asked to track what they're doing, and in some way already recording it. So sometimes it's not a matter of new effort, but redirected effort, or actually finding a way to capture the effort that's already being made in order to display it in a way that's meaningful to the student and employer.
Great. I did just put a link in the chat too. IMS has another initiative called Wellspring that's been very focused on the bridging education to employment. So we just recently finished up phase 2 of that. So there's some good resources that were just published if you want to dive deeper into that. Other questions? Did any of your institutions create a new office to oversee the CLR work or record, or assign people from your registrar's office? Was there additional staffing, responsibilities, budget? How did you resource it?
Yeah, Kelly's kind of chuckling at that question. So, you know, it's interesting because for us, it was really just kind of like a handful of people who are kind of passionate about the concept and wanted to get something off the ground. And so we kind of figured out, we got that cheerleader group together and figured out what we can do with the least amount of technology and resources possible. And we took the approach that if we had something to share, it would more likely be adopted and accepted institutionally than if we went in with a concept. And so that's the approach that we took in 2016. And from there, we've actually gotten a lot more institutional buy-in where we were able to continue the work into today.
To specifically answer Steven's question, it's the registrar's office that's responsible for the data, because we're responsible for the data. But as far as the distribution of work and putting the records out there, that in our model, we really did go do what I said. We were like, okay, well, this already exists. So we just need to put it over here instead of over there. So the people that were already in charge of entering the data, tracking it, recording it, are now simply putting it in a place, like Mark said, that we can consider a uniform manner that is consumable and then exportable in the IMS global standard. So it wasn't new work, it was different work. So no, you're not going to track this in Excel. We're actually going to build something in Banner where you can put it. Or you're already putting this in Banner, or where are you putting this? Oh, you're putting it in Banner. Well, we're going to consume and display that. So it wasn't new work. And in areas where we're looking down the road and thinking about some possible new work, the trade-off is so good for the student that the people in those areas are like, okay, you know, everybody sees the benefit. So it hasn't been a major challenge for us. But there have been some coordination efforts and some understanding efforts to get people on board and ready to move forward.
You know, I'll quickly say that when I was at Indiana, we had a couple of different initiatives, and we implemented it in much the same way that Tim described, primarily within the registrar's office. And so the direct answer to the question is no, we didn't create a new office. We considered this kind of record keeping and validation certification really one of the tasks of the registrar's office. So that's where it went.
And Mark, I might ask you to just kind of wrap it up because we're at the end of our time. So thanks everyone for joining us. And Mark, if you have any closing thoughts.
No, I just want to say that I think this is really exciting work. I think the IMS Global CLR standard is one of the key foundational components to making this kind of attribution of student learning possible in the long run, so that it becomes a little more standard understood and being able to ingest. So that's not a very elegant closing statement, but I do look like Brad Pitt.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I will follow up with links, all the links that were shared today, as well as the recording to all of you who are registered. So thank you. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your information with us.
Thank you, Kelly.